So when I was studying at uni, I took a module in Asian legends. So, like Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee. No, I'm kidding. It was more like myths and legends and folklore. So anyway, yeah. So I took this module on myths and shit in Asia, which was cool. I didn't learn much just because all my classes were online and like the chosen topics of each week weren't really coherent. So yeah, classic uni. But anyway, there was one thing that really did capture my attention and I want to share it with you. And that is, drumroll please, the Wildman. Yes, the Wildman. Have you heard of it? Or him, I should probably say. It's important to get their pronouns right at the end of the day, despite the fact it's a mythical creature. If you have heard of the Wildman, congratulations. You are part of the 0.05% of people in the West who have heard of it. And you may consider yourself severely well equipped to answer the single nichest pub quiz question ever asked in the history of pub quizzes. If you haven't heard of it, you know where you stand. But if you are concerned about seeming like a nerd, may I suggest you stop listening, because after this you will not be the same. Consider this a trigger warning, if you will. And now that they have clicked off, it's just you and me, buddy. And actually, joke's on them, because I will now demonstrate how to scam the Chinese government into funding your holidays using said Wildman. But before I do that, let me tell you about Wildmen. So, probably first things first, what is a wild man? So a wild man, and yes, there are wild women too, but I think they're called wild men. Like it's like regardless of gender, the same as like when you say human or man-made. It's like obviously man-made just means like people made it, or a human can be a woman too, in case you forgot. Or I don't know, maybe they're just difficult to tell apart, so they just call both of them wild men in case I get it wrong. Who knows? Anyway, so a wild man is it's a human-like, ape-like creature that, depending on where it's geographically spotted, can either be chill, like a kind of human ape thing doing its thing, or it can be much more aggressive and scary. So from what I can gather, it's much more like the nomads in Central Asia have come across much angrier wild men than in China, for example, where I think the wild man is more like a chill yeti, kind of like wandering around, like chilling with bears and like making daisy chains, that type of vibe. Whereas Mongolia specifically and like Kazakhstan, for example, are dealing with much more like in your face, kind of cheeky and just aggressive wild men. So they tend to kind of roam around the Central Asian steppe and in like mountainous areas of China. I think particularly the Hubei province in China, which is, hold on, let me have a look on Google Maps where it is, because I actually don't know where. Okay, so the Hubei province in China it's central-ish China, more west of the centre of China, I would say. I mean, have a look for yourself if you care enough. I mean, it's definitely not near the sea. Anyway, and if you don't know what the Central Asian steppe is, you've got to check it out. I mean, it's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. Just miles and miles of grassy land that Central Asian nomads are beasts at navigating and insanely good at roaming. And so if I've piqued your interest and you want to go on a wild man hunt, I recommend Hubei and the steppes. They're probably your best bet. And what's funny about wild men too is like we don't seem to really have them in European and American mythology. Like we have yetis, and in the US I think they have like, I don't know, yetis as well. I don't know. And the first time we actually heard about wild men in the West was when this German dude, Johann Schiltzberger, I don't know if I'm butchering his name, Johann Schiltzberger, who actually I think he was taken as a prisoner of war and taken to Mongolia. Like he wrote in his diary in like the 14th century, like, yeah, man, there's the problem with these like angry hairy beasts at night and shit, and them. And but by the way, can you imagine, like, you're taken prisoner of war, and on top of that you have to like fend yourself from like these terrifying savage men-ape creatures? Like, I shit a brick. Anyway, so yeah, and we don't seem to have wild men in Western mythology, which I don't know if that increases the chances of wild men actually existing, because it's like they're very niche. I don't know. Let me know if you've ever seen one. I'm curious. Anyway, you're probably wondering now, like, yeah, I get it, but like, how do you scam the Chinese government into paying for your holidays? So I will tell you. So when I was researching about these wild men for a stupid essay I had to write for this module, I came across this absolute treasure of an academic article. It was called 50 Years of Tracking the Chinese Wild Man, and I think it's available to check out online. So this dude, Guoxing Zhao, again, apologise for butchering the name, he was working as a kind of independent researcher for the Beijing Museum of Natural History, and he spent 50 years searching for the Chinese wild man. 50. 5 decades running around China, chasing not the dollar, but the mythical, fantasy, not real creature, the wild man. And what's incredible is this dude managed to get the Science and Technology Commission of Li Shui region, I hope I'm saying that correctly. He managed to get them to sponsor his field investigations, which I say with 100% doubt, because this guy was for sure going on hikes in the beautiful nature of China, and every now and then taking a photo of a footprint in the mud and sending it back to the museum for investigation. Like, this is pure raw genius at its finest. Like, and let me tell you what's so funny is, like, this dude knew that the wild men did not exist. Like, really, it's incredible. When you read like this article online, it actually cracks me off a little bit, because all the subheadings are like, I'm not joking. Let me just read you some. Okay, here's one. The wild man red hair found in Shenongjia region was actually dyed human hair. Like, or here's another one. The wild man hair found in Leigong actually belongs to a wild boar. Like, it's too good to be true. And he did this for 50 years. It's just wonderful. I mean, yeah, it's amazing. In a world full of Chinese governments, be a Zhao, is all I have to say, ladies and gentlemen. It's just, yeah, it's so funny to me that this guy managed to convince these various government-funded organisations that, no, I have reason to believe this mythical creature actually exists, and I'm prepared to go find it. And then, like, they fully believed him, enough to pay him to travel around. It's just, yeah, it's just wonderful. Unless they really do exist. And then in that case, joke's on us, because we're the real idiots for not believing him. I think, yeah, my sister's like random assistant teacher from when she was like in year 3 or 4 told her he had seen a Yeti and he was in an avalanche. But then, it's like, okay, sometimes you can suffer, like in the case of an avalanche, head injury and trauma, which can leave you like disorientated. And so maybe he thinks he saw a Yeti when actually he was just suffocating. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I don't want to undermine him or anyone who's convinced they've seen a mythical creature, because, you know what you see. And I would also like to see something mythical, or at least mystical. Could be cool. Or a ghost or something. Like, comment a good place to increase the chances of seeing one of the aforementioned creatures, and I will be sure to check it out when I have the funds. I don't know, maybe I'll call up Rishi Sunak and tell him about the wild men and make it like the next space race type situation, but it's like the wild man race. I don't know what it would be called. Comment a good name for that type of race, because, yeah, I'm not witty enough. But yeah, thank you for making it to the end of this. I hope